Hello and welcome to Mystical and Mysteries, the podcast. Join your host, Olivia Dybert, as she talks about true crime with a psychic medium twist. She will be spotlighting missing persons, cold cases, and paranormal investigations, and featuring interviews with experts in their field, psychic medium roundtables, and covering any and every topic under the metaphysical umbrella. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Mystical Mysteries, the podcast. I'm Olivia, and today we are here with Suzanne Timms. We're going to be talking about Patricia Otto, who was her mother and went missing in 1976. And I'm going to let Suzanne tell the story because I think, Suzanne, your passion comes out and comes true with this story. Who better to tell the story but you? Before we do any of that, I do want to go over the reading that I gave you a couple of months ago. And I'm going to tell you how I met Suzanne. It was on a Facebook page for cold cases and missing person cases. And what I do is I get on there on the occasion when I have some extra time, and I kind of this is my way of like giving back. That's how I approach that page. So I never expect money or anything like that. I just do it to help if I possibly can. And scrolling one day, and I saw your mom's pictures, and it was so strange because it was, for me, I'm an automatic writer, so I start to write to get information, and typing is the same way for me. And I just started getting information immediately when I saw your mom. And it was very short. I felt that her husband was involved. I felt that there was an argument in the home. I felt like there was strangulation involved. And I felt that she'd been moved from the home in or near water. And you responded to me after I gave that little brief thing with, "Thank you, this fits the memory I had. Are you able to get any feelings from this location?" And you put up a picture of a pathway, and the pathway has green grass, it's tall trees, and immediately I got pulled to the back and to the left of that picture. And you confirmed that that's where a body had been found. Now, Suzanne, you were 3 years old when all this went down, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you were really young. So when I looked at that picture, it was so funny because I immediately got pulled to that area. And I also got pulled for driving a long time. I felt like this male, who I believe is your father, it was a male driving for a long period, and I felt like it was a 3 to 4 hour driving window. And in the meantime, I know I've mentioned it to you before, Suzanne, sometimes I feel like I am in the body of the victim, and sometimes I feel like I'm in the body of the perpetrator. So I feel like I feel their thoughts. And the whole time he's driving, he's trying to concoct this story of, if they find her, this is what I'm going to say. And if they do this, this is what I'm going to say. And he's already like setting the stage for just in case, And so I did write that on my thing. I said that I felt that he took her, that he couldn't carry her very far. And I felt that she was not buried, but more like covered up is the feelings that I got. And then the other thing was, once I get there, I do a bit of remote viewing, which means I feel like I'm at the scene and I can turn around and see, to my 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, which is a little bit of map work. And I could hear water, but I could not see the water at all. And explain that to me. How is that even possible that I would be able to hear water?
Well, it's really interesting because where that picture was taken at, you're standing at the entrance of the it's off a logging road, and it goes down the path, and at the end of the path, there's a creek. Dry Creek and Finley Creek meet right there. But at that time of year, the water has, dried up. And so you're kind of waiting for the mountain runoff to come back and bring that water back. But you're knowing that it's going to be there. That water belongs there. At the moment you're standing there seeing it, it's not there.
That's crazy.
That was very interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy because I know I was looking. I mean, I could hear it rushing. I just could not find it. And I just thought that was so bizarre. So, it was insane. So you then told me that a body was found in a shallow grave at the end of that trail. And again, a small creek runs through this about 100 yards ahead is what you told me. And that hunters found the remains in 1978. And you had asked if there was any way you would be able to find any type of DNA in that area. And unfortunately, I didn't think that you would be able to find any DNA. And in the meantime, this was before you had cadaver dogs go out that I did this reading. And now you have had cadaver dogs out there, and unfortunately, I don't think you found anything. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the dogs alerted that there are human, scent detected out there, but digging, they were unable to actually locate any, which is exactly what you told me, that although a body was there, we were unable to actually locate her arm or hands that were removed from the grave prior to her being discovered in 1978.
Right. And then talking to Suzanne before, it was very interesting because I know I've worked with cadaver dogs myself before, and I had asked you, did the dogs alert to the trees and to the tops of the trees? You know where I'm going with
yes,
that.
you were correct again about that. I was there at the time that the dog put his legs up on the tree and was like, it's up there. No, it's down here. It's up there. And he couldn't quite decide. And she explained to me that if a body's there, that the body can decompose and that her DNA can actually be in the trees up at the top. And,
Yeah.
You become part of the forest.
You do. And I know, and it's been a long time. We're talking 1976. So I'm not surprised if it was way at the top of the trees, which was kind of why I asked. Excuse me, I'm reading my notes, you guys, because I'm old and I can't remember my reading. That was 2 months ago. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast. So, yeah. Oh, that was the other thing. So I didn't think that you guys would be able to find any DNA or any type of evidence out there. And I'm hoping that I'm completely wrong. I'm hoping maybe there's something in the near future that would help us be able to extract something. I mean, this is the kind of things that I think about all the time. Like, is there any way to extract anything if it alerted to the tree? Would they be able to extract anything from the tree to see? I don't know. But that would be really, really cool if they could in the future or near future. So the other thing that I felt was that there was a lot of weirdness happening with the coroner. I felt that the coroner wasn't very experienced at all. And I felt there was a lot of mismanagement in the case. I felt that I could literally see his hands, and I could see, let's say we had person A, and I grabbed the information for person A and I put it in person B's file. That's the kind of mismanagement that I felt happened in this case. And you were able to verify that, right?
It was at that point, Olivia, that I said, have you been reading about this case? Because on this cold case site, I don't give her name and information. I give the picture, and I'm thinking, it's like Olivia's reading, my information because you had so much information that I'm like, are you reading this? And you're like, no, I don't do that. I want to know what I'm picking up from just the images, but you were just giving me so much incredible information that was like, as far as person A and person B, we have clarified that the dental records don't match what we can see in the autopsy photos. So it's very clear that there was a Jane Doe A that was found a month prior,
Right.
and then this Jane Doe is found, and this information's been switched. And the fact that you're seeing this without knowing the name or anything, it's, how often does this happen?
Yeah,
I would hope infrequently, but that's
right.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible that you said that.
Yeah, that was see, and I just started laughing. I'm like, I don't even watch TV. I don't watch TV because if something does fall on my lap, I want to be able to do it without being front loaded with information, because sometimes, our left brain, especially in this being psychic and a medium, it's very a right brain thing to do. And sometimes our left brain wants to do that analytical overlay, and it wants to make sense of what I'm receiving, right? So I think sometimes that's when sometimes psychics and mediums, they might be picking up good information, but they're trying to explain it to their person that they're doing a reading for. And that's where we go wrong, because that's the misinterpretation of us. Though I always tell people, like, don't try to explain it. Just give what you get, because that's where the good stuff is. That's usually where we're more accurate. But then you went and told me, so it's funny because I'm reading our texts, we were going back and forth, and you did say, have you reviewed this case? That yes, Oregon made a significant amount of mistakes in the case in 1990 and ordered the destruction of the evidence, which included her remains.
Unbelievable.
That blows my mind, because the statute of limitations on a murder case, there are none. So why would you destroy evidence, especially on a Jane Doe, when you know they've been murdered? That is not an accident. That is a murder.
It makes no sense. And certainly makes this case very challenging.
Oh my gosh, 100%. And then you did, I'm passing this part here, you did send me some pictures of some of the remains that they had there, and you did tell me that some parts of her were not complete, that there were parts that she was missing, and that she was buried in a shallow grave near a log. And going through here, cadaver dogs in the area. So, do you get any feeling that he involved anyone and shared this with someone who would bring us closure? And I didn't feel that. And I know, again, we discussed before that I just didn't feel like your dad was a pretty difficult man in life, and I don't feel like he inspired any loyalty at all. I feel like a lot of people would be like didn't trust him, or basically didn't get along with him. He was a pretty difficult guy to get along. And you were able to confirm that for me. And I know, oh no, let's see. I know what I said to you after that. But I didn't feel that he had told anybody about anything, especially his inner circle. I don't think that he would have done that at all. And I know that you were concerned about that. Is that right?
Yeah, because a couple of months ago, just after we had created, the social media posts for my mom, a witness came forward stating that before their mother passed away, that my father had confessed to her, but she never went to the police with it. So this is something that they're just now investigating and looking into. But as far as it being his inner circle of people, his male friends, It was not. This is a woman who they had a very interesting relationship, and she's claiming that he admitted that he murdered her that night and he hid her body.
Wow.
We're following up on that as we speak. That's being followed up on.
Oh man, that's yeah. I and when you tell me that too, just thinking, I do feel like she was one that was duped a little bit by your dad as well. And your dad, I think, was pretty charismatic in the way that he would get women to follow him a bit, and he definitely had an MO, I believe, of the weaker women, or more quiet, on the quiet side, maybe girls that might have had some issues that then relied on the man or someone else as a significant other, codependency issues, right? So I can see how she may have held that secret if he was promising her things also at the time. You just never know, I guess.
Or she was scared of him, right? If she's scared of him because she knows
absolutely.
what he's capable of, her fear kept her from doing something, but she didn't want to take it to the grave with her. So before her passing, she told her husband and her daughter, I don't want to go to the grave with this. Somebody needs to know.
Yeah.
And I had sent you that picture. I had sent you the picture of the place where he said he stashed her body. And you got the feeling in that picture that I get the feeling in this picture that something was dumped here, but you're not getting buried. And I came back and explained to you that there was body parts dumped here on another murder. So
right.
You picked that up exactly and drew the circle around the exact area where those body parts were dumped and located. Unrelated to my father. That's the Lewis Clark serial killer. So
that is so crazy.
That was another interesting.
That is very interesting, because that we talked about this before, where I told you I don't feel that, I felt that your father has committed crimes against women before, and I got 3 women. I do believe he has actually murdered 3 women, and your mother was one of those. And yeah, I don't feel, and I know we talked about that, I don't feel that your mother was in that location at all. I feel that Finley Creek is your mother, but we'll get into that, you guys. Suzanne's going to tell the whole story of what happened. So actually, going back to the reading, I was telling you that I felt that the coroner was probably fired, and I felt there was a lot of law and litigation aplenty against this man, and you were able to confirm that as well.
Again, I did not provide the medical examiner's name, or I believe even the state, so there's no way that Olivia would know that, who or what I'm talking about. But it's interesting that I kind of laughed, because I'm like, he literally got sued for selling body parts without the victim's permission. And there was another incident where they tried to take away his license, and you just nailed him perfectly, that this is obviously someone who was, revered by the state as being an expert, but he's not ethical.
No.
So.
No.
He's no longer with us.
Yeah, and thank goodness for that. Doesn't it make you think, like, how many cases has he botched?
Many.
And that saddens me. That is,
it really does.
Unbelievable to have that much power. And I just felt, again, very inexperienced, and honestly, very just sloppy in manner. He just didn't care, and it was bizarre. Then you had asked me, actually, you had asked me where the wedding rings were, and I told you I just saw when you would ask me that, which is very funny, because at the time my clairvoyance, it's a lot stronger than it was when I just even read that. But I actually saw it as a picture, like a movie. And I saw your mom take her rings off her finger and just huck it at your dad. She was so frustrated, so over whatever was happening with them. And not the cool thing. It's not cool at all. But the one thing that I found really interesting that you told me was that you had never posted that information in the public.
That's correct. A lot of the information I have disclosed on our Facebook page, and that was one thing I have not, because that's my dad's version of the story, and he doesn't tell that to anybody until the wedding rings are found in his coat pocket, and then This is in November after she disappeared August 31st. Then he says, oh yeah, they're in my pocket. Big deal. She threw them at me,
Yeah.
Because she's leaving me and we're filing for a divorce. So it wasn't a big deal. But that was never mentioned in any of the previous interviews that, oh, by the way, when she left, she threw her wedding rings at me.
Right.
And that was another unique like this lady is literally reading my life story.
It's crazy because
having even names, information, it's crazy.
Isn't that funny? I tell you, when I felt your dad was not concerned, like, about the rings. He wasn't worried about having it in his possession because, again, he's already concocting all these stories in his head of what he was going to do if. So he was unfortunately well prepared, and I think this was premeditated. I think that was thoughts that he had in his head, but the actions happened because of this argument, if that makes sense. So he's already like thinking, like, it doesn't matter if I have the wedding rings. I'm just going to tell this story, and of course they're going to believe me. So very interesting. You had asked me also if I knew where they were, is what you had asked originally. And I did see, again, it's an image that I have. My mother had a old jewelry box. It was a wooden jewelry box, and this is exactly what I saw. And it had these little dangly things to grab and pull the drawers out, but it's tall, but it sits on your counter. And when I was looking at it, I was able to pull back and see there was an Afghan on the bed. I said there was dark furniture. I saw white gauzy curtains. And you were able to confirm that that is what the room looked like during that time. We were talking 1970.
Yeah, oddly, I couldn't see it in my mind, Olivia. I could not see the bedroom. That was in 1976, and I'm flipping through photo albums trying to find another picture, and I see Dad sitting on his bedroom, on his bed with my sister, and you described the white gauzy curtains, the dark furniture, everything, and so I'm like, he might have. The wedding rings are still not found. We don't know where the wedding rings are at. So it's very interesting that this has been an ongoing. Supposedly the attorney had them. The attorney swears that he never received them. It looks like Dad got them back. So if he had them in the jewelry box, where are they now? I don't know.
And no talks of a wooden jewelry box anywhere? Because I still feel they're like they were in this jewelry box.
Her personal belongings were packed up within months of her leaving, and all of her clothing and everything was not given to my mother's family. It was basically disposed of.
Conveniently. Yeah. Very.
Months after she disappeared.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. It was after I did this reading that I had asked Suzanne permission to do her mother's story on the podcast. And here is some really funny tidbits about me and Suzanne trying to get this together. So I had asked Suzanne permission if I could do her mom's story. And for whatever reason, with every other story, I've been able to put it together pretty quickly. I do my little recording, or I work with another medium, and then we do something on it. And this story was not coming. I could not get it together. And it was the most frustrating thing. Nothing. So I just kept working on different cases and doing different recordings and doing all kinds of stuff. It just wasn't pulling together for me. And a couple of weeks ago was my mother's birthday. She had passed away in 2013. And that night, usually on my mom and dad's birthday, I tend to dream about them or family members that are related to them in some way. But that night on my mom's birthday, I had a dream that I was talking to your mom. And she showed me herself in her late teens. I saw her leaning against the wall, and there was a phone, the old phones hanging. It was attached to the wall with a long cord, and I saw it in almost like a baby blue color. And she had bell-bottom jeans on and a little white t-shirt, and her sleeves were short. And she had the phone in her ear, and I'm standing in front of her with a phone in my hand and talking, and her mouth is moving, and I couldn't hear her. And I was like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. But I just told her, I'll tell Suzanne that I had this dream. I'll tell her that you said hi, blah, blah, blah. And she just smiled, right? And I'm like, okay, bye. And I woke up the next morning and I had a cup of coffee and I couldn't let the dream go. And I wasn't quite sure if I was really going to reach out to you, Suzanne, because I know that sometimes it sounds weird or crazy. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. And I had a cup of coffee and I just started thinking about the podcast again and how ironic it was that I just couldn't put it together. And I started coming up with these ideas of, you know what? Suzanne has to tell this story. Suzanne has to do this. She is the champion of her mother. And the things that you do for your mom are so inspiring. And you're so passionate about this that why wouldn't I have you tell the story? And that's when I reached out to you. And here's something, again, totally and completely crazy. Well, before I get into that, the day of my mother's birthday was also the birthday of the person that brought you up, is it not?
Correct. That is the only mother that I've known. That would be our dad's sister who raised us. It was also her birthday. So I said, maybe she's acknowledging her as well as,
I just think because there's
really
that connection.
That
yeah, I think it's because my mom was like, this is what you need to do. My mom and my dad, they do guide me and help me a lot. And it's like synchronicities like that where her birthday led me to you. I had a dream about your mom. This is her connection. This is the connection that... So it didn't surprise me too much when you said that, but I was like, that is pretty freaking cool. And when I tell people, spirit is brilliant. They will do and get their message across in any way possible. There's always that link that is bound to happen. So Suzanne and I got together after that. We actually did a recording. We did the podcast. And the next morning I went in to edit it. And what happened? Everything worked. You could hear me, you could hear the music, and Suzanne would start talking and I could not hear your voice. I did tests.
I had no voice.
It was the weirdest thing. And I started to giggle because I was like, man, I wish I would have known really what she was trying to tell me. Like, see, they're brilliant. She knew we were going to do this together. And she was just like, I can't hear you. It's exactly what happened in my dream. It was the weirdest thing. So it seems like things just one after another. It was just too funny. But yeah, and then after that, I just thought, well, maybe there was a reason we had to postpone this taping and get this done. In the meantime, I had what I call little whispers, I believe from your father, and I gave you an unintentional reading. I think that needed to be done. I think it was important, and I think that's one of the reasons the other recording and things didn't work. But Dad giving you permission to do this and not to feel guilty, and because you're talking about your parents, both of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in our discussion that we had, I never once said to you, I'm torn or I feel bad about this. I never said like, I'm angry with my father. But when we talked about it, I said, you have no idea how torn I am, but yeah. I love my father. And for you to just nail it again. And then it's also interesting that you said he's holding out a white bird.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was born in Whitebird.
Oh, really?
It's the name of the city in Idaho. And the day he dies, he says, are you taking me to Whitebird? He thinks he's going back to Whitebird. That was the day he died. So it's really interesting that you said to me he's holding out a white bird as in peace. But does the white bird also represent something that's where it started?
It absolutely could. I mean, again, I don't want to interpret. We were just talking about this, right? Misinterpreting.
Yeah, and don't interpret it.
Don't interpret it. Just give it. But I did feel like that is crazy. That's crazy that he's from Whitebird.
Whitebird, and you didn't know that. You didn't know that was one of the last things he said was, in his confused state of mind, he said, "Are you taking me back to Whitebird?" And I had to look it up because it's just a small little town in Idaho, not far from Lewiston, where she disappeared.
That's wild. And you see, this is what we call evidential mediumship. So spirit comes in, they give me information, and then they give me evidence that it is them. And that's why we call it evidential mediumship. Because why would I know that? I wouldn't know that. That's crazy.
No, incredible.
Wow. But I do feel that we're on the right track, and I think that was a really important message that he wanted you to know, that, you know, he doesn't carry those earthly things with him anymore. And I know he praised you for being a great parent. And I think that was important for you to know, that he wished he could have been the way you were, but he didn't have that genetic makeup. There's things in his brain that were not right. And he could not be that parent to you, but he is so proud of the parent that you are. And so I think that's, oh my gosh. Yeah, thank your dad. You can thank him. He hears you. They're all there. And we talked about that already. I know that you worked with your sister a lot to gain information about your mom and what happened to your mom, because you were told stories of what happened to your mom. You honestly felt that she just left you guys. And I know that your mother had left your father before, but she took you guys with them, and she wouldn't just leave you.
It's really hard to forgive myself for that, because you carry that forever, that I believed his lie.
Right.
His story was that she left us and didn't want to be a mother anymore. And I have to let go of that hatred and anger that I carried my whole life.
Yeah.
I know she didn't leave us.
No way. And she's taken you before. So that's, I think, just solidifies a little bit of some of the feelings that we had gotten, like in the reading and with what you carry with you. And I'm going to let you take over and just tell us about the story of your mom, first of all, but I also want you to tell us about all the things that you have done in her honor. And again, you and Natalie started this adventure. Unfortunately, your sister passed away also. And you grabbed that torch and you carried it forward for all of you guys. So again, when I say inspiration and champion for your family, girl, you are the epitome of that. So I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, I'm going to try to give you a condensed version of this, because you're talking 46 years trying to be crammed into a brief story. So my mother in 1968, met my father as a young teenager in high school. She was cleaning his house and babysitting for the family that was living there. He had a woman living there that had 5 children. That relationship kind of blossomed from housekeeper, babysitter to my father kind of grooming her, and they started a relationship when she was 16 years old.
Right.
In 1970, she was 18 years old, and they got married. A big church wedding, and I'm sure that my grandparents did not approve of this wedding, because my father was a divorced, 32 years old, almost twice her age, a divorced older man. He was his own business owner. He had a small construction business where he did heavy equipment operating, and he did roads and provided gravel, and he traveled a lot. He went as far as Montana, Washington, Oregon, Idaho area. They had my sister in 1971, and it was apparent at that time that his alcoholism was,
Right.
progressing and becoming worse. I believe he got a DUI around that time. He also had some additional legal trouble at that time, and one of his friends sued him over a business deal, and he lost a lot of money on that. And he was very wealthy at the time. That financial burden was obviously a lot of stress for a new family.
Sure.
Despite that, they brought me into the world in 1973. And so in 1976, when I was 3 years old, this alcoholism had progressed to the point that she had left twice, had gotten her own place, had filed for divorce, had dated another man during that time.
Right.
She was gonna move on. She'd started classes at Valley Business College. She was gonna get a degree and leave him. She was very determined and very smart young woman, 24 years old, beautiful blonde. The night that she disappeared, she'd gotten home from her evening classes at around 11 o'clock at night, put us to bed downstairs, and that's when the fight ensued. I was frightened by the noises, went upstairs.
Right.
I saw what I knew was a physical altercation of them each hitting each other, and then he put his hands around her neck and moved her up against the wall and drug her out of my sight. It scared me, and so I ran back down to my sister. Obviously, the next day, my mother was nowhere to be seen, and my father was in a big hurry to get out of the house. We thought he was going to go look for her. That's what we assumed was happening. He went to his girlfriend's house, who was moving out of state instead, and helped her pack up and finish moving. That was the same woman who had been living in the house prior to my mother dating my father.
Okay.
He took us to families. He took us to my mom's sister's house, and we were there for several months while we thought Dad was out looking for Mom. And my sister and I just waited, kind of, nobody knew.
Right.
Where is she? We don't know. Who's going to tell a 3 and 5-year-old? We think your dad did something terrible to her, and they had called the police and filed a missing persons report. I think initially they thought she's left before, and they're kind of going through a hard time, she'll come back. I don't think they initially took it as a homicide investigation.
Right.
It was kind of viewed as a marital spat. And I know the detective regrets that they didn't initially just say, this is a homicide case, this is not normal, because you can't go back then and grab DNA and grab evidence that you could have gotten.
Right.
Years pass. Years pass.
And I was going to say, so you were 3 years old, and I know that you actually talked to the police when you were 3. They questioned you, kinda, and you told them what you saw. And of course, I mean, I understand as an adult, it would be really difficult to believe the words of a 3-year-old. That's not going to hold up in a court of law. I get that. But you would think...
I didn't actually get a chance to talk to the police officer because my father wouldn't let him talk to me.
Oh.
So it's in the police report documented what I reported to my uncle. And I was explaining to them, I was explaining to my uncle that she's not coming back because I saw what he did, right? I knew that she wasn't breathing when he took her away. And I said that Daddy hit Mommy, Mommy hit Daddy, and then he hid her. Like he hid her body.
Right.
And that's when they called the police and reported that I said that. But then my dad removed us from that home and instructed all family we were not allowed to talk to the police.
Right.
They were not to ask us any questions. They're not to speak of her because it's too painful.
Right.
So don't talk about her. If Patty's family talked about my mom, they threatened they wouldn't get to see us.
Yeah.
So my mom's name was not mentioned, and she wasn't allowed to be, celebrated or spoken about or even discussed because my father had strict instructions that you won't see these girls again if you continue to ask questions. I guess it's important to say that 2 months after she disappeared, that's when my father was arrested for hiring a hitman to kill the captain of the police department.
Right.
He did pay a hitman to kill the captain because he felt they were trying to accuse him of murder, and he gave the money and tried to arrange for 2 more hits at the time. The guy that was doing the hit is an undercover cop who was brought in. So they set him up, and my father fought this attempted murder charge. He spent 4 years in the maximum state Idaho penitentiary, and he won his appeal, and he was released in 1982. So Dad comes home. That means we leave the stable family we've been with, and now we go back home into that house in Lewiston. And that's when I've told people before that, yes, we asked my dad, where is Mom?
Right.
Where is she? He insisted that she left for another man, that he would never hurt her. But I knew what I saw.
Right.
So that's extremely difficult for a child, knowing I know what I saw, and I'm being told it was a bad dream, but it did not feel like a dream. It felt very real and very scary.
Yeah. And I told you,
I
Suzanne,
wanted to believe him.
of course, it's your dad. I mean, of course. And I've told you, I used to be a foster parent. I fostered several little children that came from very hard situations. And as they're older, they never, I got them at what, 2 or 3, and now they're 6 or 8. And they remember everything. And so don't discount it because it's real. It imprints on your soul and affects who you are for the rest of your life and how you approach things. And I mean, that's got to be so difficult.
It really did. It stuck with me. And then you're just in this turmoil of, why do I keep having this terrible dream? I should have wonderful dreams, not terrible dreams.
Right.
So that's like that was the early 1980s. At the same time that's happening, in 1978, Oregon discovers a body of a young female who had been buried in the woods.
Right.
And this is when the detective determines that there's this body that's been found, and so he's rushing over to go view this body, because not only was it a young Caucasian female, they were found wearing red pants and a white blouse, which is exactly what my mother was reported last seen wearing, red pants and a white blouse. So the detective flies my grandparents over there in the middle of the night. They go and view the clothing, but the interesting thing was there's these men's boots or like hiking boots and these other items that don't belong to my mother. So I think my hopeful grandparents were like, hey, if the shoes don't fit,
right,
it's not her, right? Those aren't her shoes. But that goes back to what you were saying about the concocting this story. If she had come into the house to put us to bed and had taken off her shoes like you would in your home, because she kept it perfectly clean, she would have been barefoot when he drug her outside.
Right.
So if you bury a barefoot body, how did she get out here barefoot?
Right.
The person who buried her was thinking, if I put shoes on her, it makes it look like she either walked out here or she was taken or she hitchhiked and got away. The shoes don't match the outfit. They're literally hiking boots. They appear to be men's hiking boots. And the hunters that found the body, they just found this very shallow grave. Her skull had been exposed. The ribs are exposed. You know, as the snow melted off, she was barely buried.
Right.
Exactly like you said. Not very deep, just in a shallow grave. 1978, let's see, I'm trying to go as fast as I can in the story. In 1990, Oregon decides that they don't have an identity on that body because, the Oregon medical examiner compared that woman's x-ray to my mom's x-ray and said, it's not her. So that was the end of my mom's case. It is that cold. Since that comparison, her case that cold. In 1990, Oregon, for some reason, decided we don't have an ID, we don't know who she is, and it's obviously not a local person because nobody here's missing. And they ordered destruction not only of the remains, but of the evidence. So the red pants, the white blouse, and the shoes were destroyed. Her body was sent with the supposed baby. It says that the person was pregnant.
Right.
Possibly very pregnant, but there's no measurements, so we don't know whether this is a 12-inch fetus or a 20-inch fetus.
Right.
The baby and the woman's remains are sent to the closest crematorium. Now this happened in Oregon,
right,
but it's interesting that the closest crematorium at 1990 is across state lines in Walla Walla, Washington. So she's sent to be cremated, and there's errors on the paperwork again, so she doesn't get sent back. She gets pushed off to the side, and they said, well, when someone figures out they're missing a body, they'll tell us, and they'll come looking for her. Got sat off to the side. It just says miscellaneous cremains on the box because there's a baby and a woman. Miscellaneous, off to the side. In 1999, I left Idaho with my 2 young children, and I was leaving my husband at the time, and I moved near my sister who was living in Dayton, Washington. That's about 30 miles away from Walla Walla, Washington.
Right.
As soon as I drove into Walla Walla for my first interview, because there was a hospital there, I drove into Walla Walla and I said to my sister, this feels like home. Walla Walla feels like home. I don't want to live in Dayton. I want to live in Walla Walla. I'm going to make this my home. And I got that job, the first job I applied for, and I worked at that place for 20 some years. So Walla Walla has been my home, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. In 2006, that's when my sister was killed in a horrible accident.
Right.
And she strangely died in Orfino, Idaho, which is where my father had died back in 1983. My dad died in Orfino. And Natalie died with her husband, her only child, and a 12-year-old family friend. A carbon monoxide poisoning accident, just a freak thing. So my mom's case it kind of just died with my sister at the time. I couldn't touch it. I didn't want to look at it. One of her friends took the entire case file. I'm talking totes of material, a lot of information. And she took it and said, when you're ready, it'll be here when you're ready. That was in 2006. It sat until 2021 of June, when I was scrolling through my Facebook, just like you were.
Yep.
And a picture pops up that just grabbed me, and I'm in bed, and I literally jump out of bed because I'm looking at myself in an unidentified forensic image.
Right.
That makes no sense. Why did somebody sketch me? And I click on it, and it describes the Jane Doe that was found. It describes her red pants, her white blouse, that she was a short Caucasian female with light blonde or sandy brown hair. And she was discovered in 1978 by hunters. I'm like, this looks exactly like my mom.
Right.
This has to be my mom. I'm clicking on every article I can find about it and trying to figure out, how did they miss this? This is literally 3 hours away from my home. There is no way that they didn't know that my mom is missing, and here they find a body wearing the same clothing within 2 years of her disappearance. How can they miss this? I'm looking at the articles of when the body was found, and it tells me that these hunters from Oregon had located her, and a name of the hunter jumps off the page at me. It's my current grandfather. I've got to be losing my mind, right? There's no way my husband's grandfather found this body in 1978. He's next to me, and I say, did Grandpa Parr ever mention finding a body in 1978? And he's like, you're crazy. Like, that would come up in a conversation, right? If your family found a body,
sure,
you would all be talking about it.
Of course.
I know I would be. Well, his grandpa passed away in 2009, so I can't call Grandpa Parr, but I can call his dad. And so I'm like, I'm calling your dad. He knows something about this. And my father-in-law.
This is your current husband's father.
My current. Yes. I call my father-in-law, and I'm like,
unbelievable.
Rob, did your dad ever mention finding a body in 1978 in Eastern Oregon? And his response was, how do you know about that? I never told you about that. So I'm like, well, tell me about it. And he says, we were out there hunting. There was like 6 families, and initially this kid found this body and came back to the camp and said, I think I just found human remains. As they went back out to go search for it on the hillside, Rob he's a child, and he's the one that, oh, there it is again. Here it is. This is definitely a human skull. And he said, yeah, the jaw was over here, and you could see silver fillings, and he's explaining how the rib cage was exposed, and their boots were sticking up, and the legs were crossed. And at that time, the Finley Creek task force had sent me the crime scene photos. And I'm looking at the photos while my father-in-law is describing them. And I'm like, has he seen these pictures? No, he was a child. Why would he be seeing these crime scene photos? Right. He's remembering exactly what he saw, because just like my memory of being ingrained in my brain, finding a body is kind of a big deal.
It is, absolutely.
And that's going to stick in a child's head.
100%.
So he says, you know what, this is crazy. This can't be right. He said, I'm going to drive to the place where we were camping, and I'm going to find the body. Don't tell me anything in your case file. I don't want to see pictures. I don't want to see. I want to go to the spot. Because if he goes to the spot and I have the coordinates of where the body's found at, we're in the same location. He drives to the location and tells us, okay, I found it. I know where it's at. And so he's going to bring us out there and show us where it is. It's exactly what the Finley Creek Task Force file has as written on the police report of
Right.
where the body was found in 1978. So absolutely unbelievable. I'm reaching out to this group of volunteers to say, you guys drew this face, and here's me, and here's my mom, and you can share these pictures. And she's wearing the same clothes and was never identified, and my mom is still missing. I'm pretty sure you have my mom. That's when I found out that she had been cremated and sent to Walla Walla and had never returned. And when I tell Mel has no idea where I live, and I'm like, Mel, I've lived in Walla Walla since 1999. Are you telling me my mom's been sitting in a box on a shelf ever since I've been here?
Unreal.
So, yeah. So where are we now? So I told you that we brought cadaver dogs. After my father-in-law showed us where the body was found, we did bring cadaver dogs up, and they've been there 3 times, and all 3 times the dogs have alerted there was definitely a body here, and there's possibly still remains here and possibly remains here. 2 different dogs, both alerted in the same spot. There's human remains. We had to go back to Oregon and say, hey, I know you closed this unsolved homicide, and I don't know what to tell you, but I think there could be other body parts out there, and I would like for you to go out there and find them. We had to present the case. We presented the case to the prosecuting attorney, to Oregon State Police, to the Department of Justice, begging them to please reopen this case that you closed and provide resources. That took time. It took a lot longer than what I would hoped it would, but they eventually did come through. They spent 2 days digging at the gravesite, and as you saw, they didn't find anything. They didn't find anything. And my concern was that Oregon would say, hey, we tried. That's it, we're done. But they're not. Oregon has reviewed the case, and they look at it, and they can see that there is a huge possibility that this is my mother. Right. And they're not giving up. So Oregon has committed to continuing to try to identify her, even though they know they don't have a body, even though they have no evidence. Right. Even though we know that the medical examiner has changed, the dental information is completely mixed up. There's a huge crossover between the Jane Doe found in Portland and the Jane Doe found over here. Right. So that's where we're at right now. We're just, hoping for another miracle. If somebody could come forward that had information showing that my dad knew that area or had done work in the area to connect him. I mean, and I'm so dead set on that it was my father, but what if it was somebody else? I mean, there's all these what ifs.
Sure. It's so funny. We talked earlier about spirit being brilliant. Look at all the things that we had to go through to get here today. And look at where you are. You're with your mom. You said it felt like home. These are not coincidences in my book. I don't believe in that. And as hard as some of them can be, I feel like everything happens for a reason, whether it's your journey or the other person's journey or there's always lessons to be learned. I want you to tell me about your sister. She had your mom's dental records. Tell me about how you found that out.
So as soon as we discovered these 2 Jane Does are it's obviously the same person in my mind, I was like, well, let's just do another dental comparison, right? That's how they did it in 1978. Let's do the dental again. So I contacted Lewiston Police Department, and I'm like, hey, you guys are going to be so excited. This is a very old case of yours and my mom. And I really think that Oregon made a mistake, and we can fix this really easy. And they went back through my mom's file, and they said, unfortunately, we don't have any dental records for your mom. What? How, after 45 years of a missing person, do you have no dental records? For a missing person?
And you've said 100 times, how did you rule my mom out? How did they rule her out?
Yeah. It said by x-ray. So I was like, it said the x-ray doesn't match, but yet we can't find an x-ray of the Union County Jane Doe, and you don't have an x-ray of my mom. So what did you use to do the rule out?
Right.
They couldn't answer. So that's when I asked for my sister's friend to bring me that entire file. And going through my sister's file, I find that she had gone to my mom's dentist in around 2002 and got a copy of her x-ray that was from 1975. So here Natalie has this one and only x-ray.
Oh my gosh.
And Oregon says, give it to me. Give me that x-ray. And I'm like, are you kidding? I have one x-ray and you've lost a body.
Yeah, right.
Clothes, you've lost the shoes. And you want me to give you the one x-ray that I have in my mom's? So I'm like, no way, no, I'm not handing this over. So we were trying to get a copy, and these are old. Oh, look. I happen to have it right here. I have one of these old, the film x-rays. Yes. And I need a copy of this. So I go in the dentist, and they're all like, oh, no, we're digital. I can scan it in for you. And I'm like, no, I want to give them one of these. I don't want it to be digital. I want it to be just like this, because I believe this is printed on the wrong side, and they need to see this to see that left is right and it's wrong. And if they don't have this little x-ray, they won't see that it's printed on the wrong side of the paper.
Right.
So we're working to get a copy of this x-ray, and we finally track down my cousin Jennifer, who's helping me with the case. She tracks down a little tiny dental office that's about 30 miles out of Lewiston that can copy these on their old digitizer, whatever it's called. Jennifer goes, very last minute, gets this copy done. She calls the lady back. You have no idea how much we appreciate this. And the lady says, oh, what police department do you work for? And then Jennifer was scared, thinking, oh God, what if they won't do this if I don't work for a police department?
Right.
She's like, I'm actually family. Then she's thinking, oh God, they're going to say I'm not going to help you because they think this is for a missing person case. It's got to be for a police department. She's like, oh, no, I just asked because my dad used to work for the police department, so I'm always kind of curious. And Jennifer explains, oh, it's a missing persons case, and my aunt disappeared way back in the 70s. Who's your dad? Captain Dwayne Ayler, the man that my father tried to murder.
I'm telling you.
Jennifer said, I didn't know what to say. Your mind just of all the people in the world to help us, Captain Ayler's daughter helped us do this one thing that we couldn't. It was insane.
That is insane.
It has to be spirit.
Oh, 100%.
That has to be spirit. And she's been so helpful. We called back again to be like, hey, Tamara, I know she didn't tell you who those x-rays were, but I'm Ralph Otto's daughter, and I just want you to know I have no hard feelings, obviously, towards their family.
Right.
My father only wanted to kill your dad because he was such a good cop, and he was getting close to solving this case, and that's why he wanted to kill him.
Yes.
And she's been great. It's been interesting to have Dwayne Ayler's daughter supporting us through this. And then back to my sister again, there was another incident where Oregon told us that it's not our fault that Idaho never presented Patty as an option, because Patty's not listed anywhere in the Jane Doe homicide file. There's 44 pages of the homicide file, and my mom is not listed anywhere. If she was presented and ruled out, why doesn't it show that, well, we know Patty Otto does, even though she has the same exact clothes on and fits the profile, it's not her. Not one mention. So it was about December of last year, and my sister's in my head, and as I said, she's passed more than 15 years at that point, and she's telling me that I needed to update this address on this account of hers. I kept trying to ignore her, thinking, I don't know why updating her address is important now. 15 years later, it doesn't matter. The account's long gone. I don't need to worry about it. But she just kept giving me this persistent thought that I needed to do it. So I went to her mail file, I opened it, found this E-Trade account that she was talking about, and I'm like, oh, weird. She was right. It has her old Dayton address, and I was supposed to forward all of her mail to me. Weird. I'm calling them, and underneath that E-Trade account is a police report that I had never seen before. And guess what it is? Idaho presenting Patty as a perfect match. It's Idaho saying,
this is our girl.
You have my girl.
Yeah.
This is my girl. You have my girl. He is literally saying, this is my girl. I'm coming now. midnight. He flies my grandparents at midnight. That's how sure he is that that is my mother. Why is this not listed anywhere in Oregon's file? Why does Oregon have not one mention of my mom? That's kind of a big deal when somebody says, I'll meet you at midnight. Can you open up the lab at midnight?
Yes. So my husband is former detective also, and was talking to him about that. And we were talking about, I said, it's the coroner. And he said, well, yeah, it is the coroner. He's like, as a police officer. And I said, this is exactly what I said to Suzanne was, if a coroner presents a police officer information, he's an expert in his field, he or she. So why wouldn't the police officer think that that's what he's getting is correct information? And, this is, that is just, it blows my mind that you guys were able to find that.
It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Thank you, Natalie.
Absolutely mind-blowing. So once we presented this new evidence that we didn't have previously, that, look, Idaho did present her, and you guys did know that my mother was a perfect match.
Yes.
And she did have x-rays presented because the detective literally, he had gone to my mom's dentist and he had gotten 2 copies of these. One he mailed because he was responding to the APB for the first Jane Doe. And the second copy he grabbed when he flew out. And that's why Lewiston has no x-rays in their file, because he took their original copy with him when he flew to Pendleton. And he's like, look, this is my girl. You have my girl, and here's the records. So if they requested a comparison to Portland Jane Doe, right, and then they requested a comparison for Union County, there should be 2 rule out in my mom's chart for her file. There's only 1. There's only 1 rule out. There's not 2. So Jane Doe 1 was identified. A couple years after her body was found, she was identified. So we know who she is, and her dental records do match her. So we know that those dental records are correct. But there's no way that that woman's dental records also match a second Jane Doe who had been found a month later. There's no way they match.
Right.
My theory was he just wrote it down on hers. He wrote the same information down on hers. There's no way. There's no way 2 people found within a month each other have the same feeling. I have none. I have 0 feelings. Right. So there's no way that she would match me.
Right.
To say that these 2 women matched exactly with like 15 fillings and they're the exact same teeth, that's
hogwash.
Absurd.
That's ridiculous. Oh,
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
This story.
I think that's where we're at right now.
This story, it's unbelievable. And we've talked about, I jokingly said, you need to write a book. And what did you tell me? I
said, I'm trying to write a book, but I keep waiting for this happy ending. I have this great story, but I don't want to end the story with, I thought it was her.
That's when the second book comes out.
99.9% sure. I want it to be, well, I guess you're right. I could say part 2 to come, but I want it to be that she pulled me here to Walla Walla. She drove me to my husband.
Yes.
My husband and I are 10 years apart. We are definitely an odd couple. We were drawn together, and from the moment we had our first date, he's never left my side. He's my rock. He is everything my father is not.
Right.
Such a wonderful man. And my mom is like, yes, that guy.
Yes.
You need that guy.
That's so
And his
crazy.
family is the one who found her.
I mean,
it's the coincidences. Oh.
Yeah. No, the synchronicities.
I can't even verbalize.
I know. It's insane. Yeah. We were talking about this book. So you know how I feel about you. I think you're a huge inspiration. And it's you're so active in your mom's case. And we talked about that, how therapeutic it is for people who suffer from ambiguous loss. And, ambiguous loss is people who don't get closure. And even if it's a murder case, you have the body, but you don't know what happened. It doesn't make it any easier. And then you have people who have a family member that's disappeared and they don't ever hear from them ever again. And as much as I can empathize, I have no idea what you guys go through. And I found this author, and I actually pulled the book today. And her name is Pauline Boss. And she wrote this book. Let's see if you guys can see it without my, not going to happen. But my,
your background.
Yeah, it's getting in the way. But Pauline Boss, and she talks about loss, trauma, and resilience. And it's a book about ambiguous loss, how people get stuck in grief because they don't know whether they should grieve or not. And I hope no one really has to, I mean, unfortunately they do, but I wish that no one would have to go through something like that. I lost my daughter at the grocery store for 1 minute and I had a panic attack. I can't imagine it being years later and still not knowing where my loved one is. So you took all that energy. I know you also lost your son as well. And you started a Facebook page for him, which kind of inspired a Facebook page for your mom, right?
Yeah. After losing our son to suicide in 2013, I found that it was healing for my journey to kind of blog about my feelings and my thoughts, because you have all this love that's just no place for it to go, and all these memories, and you don't want your child to die with their suicide. And so I started to talk about Isaiah and his life and how we're hoping and how we are surviving. And I did find it healing. And as much as people say, I don't know how you can talk about it, it's so personal. If that works for me, that's great. It may not work for someone else. But when we discovered this case with my mom, I realized, okay, it's 2021 and my mom's been missing since 1976. She was totally forgotten by the media, 100% forgotten by the media. The first little news article is about this small when she first disappeared, and then you don't see her name until 1997. This is ridiculous. What happened to my mother should never happen to anyone. She's missing. It should have been big news. So I'm like, I'm gonna create a page. My cousin Jennifer's gonna help me, and we created a page for my mother. And I sat and thought about what I want to call this. Help find Patty, locating Patty, whatever. And the name Patty's Voice just came to me so perfectly that I'm like, I want this to be us being my mom's voice, because she was silenced in 1976.
Yes.
My father silenced her, and the media silenced her, and law enforcement silenced her, and we are going to be her voice, and we are going to be freaking loud and get this case solved.
And you're going to be freaking loud because you were also silenced. You were never allowed to talk about her.
We were not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to use her name, not allowed to ask those questions, And if you did ask those questions, if I were to say, when is my mom's birthday? I think the answer would more than likely be, I don't know. Don't worry about that. It's, you don't need to worry about that. Everything was so painful that just don't talk about it and don't ask questions, because we don't know where she is, or the real answer is they do know where she is and they don't want to admit that.
Right.
So never being celebrated, no Mother's Day, no, cards to her or anything. So it had been almost exactly a year from the time I found the Facebook photo, and then August of this year, her birthday was coming up and she was going to be 70 years old. And I realized her birthday in 1976 was the last time she was celebrated.
Yes.
We never had a funeral. We never had a celebration of life.
Right.
We never had a honor my mom day. We never had anything. And so we threw together a celebration in a month. We threw together Patty's party, and we invited the community to come together, and people donated for a sign. And so they carried signs to celebrate her and to recognize her case. We gathered downtown, did a walk down Main Street, sang happy birthday to my mother for the first time in all those years. To have my family there, the Otto family and the O'Malley family, who are like these arch rivals who couldn't get along for anything.
Right.
And they're together saying, we all want Patty to come home, and we are Patty's voice, and we are being heard. It was so meaningful to me to have community members. It's just not the same as me lighting a candle at home and saying, I remember you. I need to know she wasn't forgotten by her community, and it was important.
Your mother was acknowledged in such a beautiful way. I think it's unbelievable. And we talk about being therapeutic. I know a lot of people have a hard time with the word suicide, and like it's taboo, and it's not. Here's the thing: you going on and talking about your son and his suicide attempts, and that's helping somebody else that doesn't have the courage, not even the courage, but the strength maybe to talk about suicide. And so it may not be for some, but it's awesome that you gained strength. You helped through that grief of your son, but in the meantime, you're helping other people. And turn that around to your mother. And to me, you are still that inspiration to, I would hope, other families. If you guys can, you need to get on the Facebook page. It is called Patty's Voice. All these pictures that we've talked about are on the Facebook page so that you can see. If you're here with us and joining us on YouTube, I have all these pictures scrolling. And a couple of my favorites, you get to see the overlay of the dental records over her picture, and you can see how it exactly fits her face. But my absolute favorite picture that you have, and I have here on scrolling, is the picture of your mother and your two sons, and they are all at the age of 11. They are like triplets. You cannot. I was like,
it was
which
just
one is
here this
Patty?
last summer. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Landon's hair had gotten longer, and I looked at his face, and it was like deja vu kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he looks so much like his brother. And then I get the picture of Isaiah, and Landon was only 3 when Isaiah passed. I put Isaiah, and then I'm like, this is my mom too. She is so strongly coming through me and my children. And I'm
Yes.
like, she's been here this whole time, coming through me, coming through them, and that she gets to live on through them. And obviously we wish that it had been in a different way, but
Absolutely.
That was just such a blessing to my heart to be like, I did not know how much I looked like my mother until I put those pictures side by side with that forensic image, and I'm like, no one thought this woman was me. I look so much like her.
Yeah.
That's incredible. How did I never know that? Well, I didn't know it because she's a dirty word.
Right.
And nobody's going to tell me that I look like a dirty word.
Right. Well, and now you get to champion for her. You're her strongest voice. And ironically, we were laughing originally because we did this recording and Suzanne lost her voice. And we were, the whole time we were saying that I needed to interview you because you are Patty's voice. Literally, you are her voice. You are the one that tells her story, champions for her. You are working diligently with the police who now believe you, and everything is going the way it should be. We're hoping that more comes forward and you can actually say the Finley Creek Jane Doe is Patricia Otto, which deep in my soul, I feel it is. And I'm hoping that you have that tangible proof. It would be beautiful, but you know she is. I know that's her. But we were laughing because she's like, I'm Patty's voice. This is why I needed to be on. And then we did the recording and I couldn't hear you. And I thought, that is so funny. That dream was twofold. You had to do the interview and obviously I needed to check my audio. But here we are. It all worked out. You got a beautiful message from your dad. And I believe he also helping, and they're all together. I know I've told you this before, that they are with you from Natalie to your son, to your dad, to your mom, and everybody else, that they don't go away and they support you. And you know this. I mean, they've led you to all kinds
all
of
the
really
way to
cool.
The captain of the police force still helping us.
Yes. I mean, this is awesome. And I hope it just continues to gain viewers and information. And again, Suzanne put out there that if you know anything, we will have information in the description below that you would be able to contact. Maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your grandmother that happens to know Ralph or happened to hear about the story or just happened to get whispers of their own. Come forward. You never know when that one little piece of nugget of information is that piece that is the glue that holds that whole puzzle together, you know? So, Suzanne, we did it. I thank you so much for coming, and I champion for you.
Thank you for letting me share her story, and thank you. I look forward to reconnecting with you again to tell you when this case is solved.
Yes, you need to put that book out, because I think it's going to be so therapeutic, not just for you, but for others. And we talked about, again, ambiguous loss, and a lot of people feel stuck. And I feel, especially if you're in that category of ambiguous loss, that when you do something in the name of your loved one, it helps you move through that. And it gives you purpose. And purpose is what holds us together, I think, as human beings. So thank you for sharing her with me and trusting me in all of this, because I feel super honored that you're here with me.
Thank you, Olivia.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. All right, guys. So again, I know I always say this, 90% of, or I would say probably higher, 98% of the people I read, and I attach myself to the victim, they all had that gut feeling of something not being right or something possibly going wrong. And I say it, and I'll keep saying it, listen to your gut instinct, you guys, because that is your higher self. That is your spirit team trying to tell you and warn you. Don't worry about hurting feelings, because I think a lot of people fall in that category. Oh, I got a bad feeling, but I don't want to hurt that person's feelings, so I'm going to go anyways. So listen to that gut feeling. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks again, Suzanne, for being here and sharing your mother and her story. And if anybody knows anything about Patricia Otto, please contact the people that I will list below in the description and help Suzanne out. So thank you again, everybody, and we will talk to you again next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Mystical and Mysteries, the podcast. If you liked what you heard, please remember to hit like and subscribe. Have a question for Olivia, or have a missing person that needs to be highlighted? Feel free to get in touch. You can reach her at theclaireconnection.com. Until next time, stay safe.